Now among those who went up to worship at the festival were some Greeks. They came to Philip, who was from Bethsaida in Galilee, and said to him, "Sir, we wish to see Jesus." Philip went and told Andrew. Then Andrew and Philip went and told Jesus. Jesus answered them, "The hour has come for the Son of Man to be glorified. Very truly, I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains just a single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. Those who love their life lose it, and those who hate their life in this world will keep it for eternal life. Whoever serves me must follow me, and where I am, there will my servant be also. Whoever serves me, the Father will honor. Now my soul is troubled, and what should I say? Father, save me from this hour? No, it is for this reason that I have come to this hour. Father, glorify your name." Then a voice came from heaven. "I have glorified it, and I will glorify it again." The crowd standing there heard it and said that it was thunder. Others said, "An angel has spoken to him." Jesus answered, "This voice has come for your sake, not for mine. Now is the judgment of this world. Now the ruler of this world will be driven out. And I, when I am lifted up from the earth, will draw all people to myself." He said this to indicate the kind of death he was to die.
So, Matt Damon takes a selfie because he is by himselfy, all alone on Mars, accidentally left behind in the movie The Martian. It was an accident, an emergency happened, but now he's somewhere between 36 and 62 million miles left behind, depending on the orbit. I had to look that up. And Damon has food rations for only a few hundred days, which seems like, oh, no problem. Except that if NASA knows he's alive, it would take many hundreds of days if they can somehow try to rescue him. But all is not lost, because Matt Damon is a botanist. Who knew? His character is, anyway. That's why they brought him, to see if he could learn about if there was any plant life there. So he has a lot of time to think. And he realizes that potatoes are part of his food rations. And being a botanist, he says, I can grow more potatoes if I can find a way to grow them. So to do this, he must convert part of the Mars lab into a greenhouse. And it's Arctic cold out there, kind of like here right now, actually. So he must create heat as well, make a heater. And to do this, I'll leave the details out, except this one, that he had to find a way to ignite it, and he borrowed a crucifix left behind by one of his fellow astronauts, how symbolic, and he took wood shavings from that to ignite his new greenhouse heater. And still, he had to face the fact that he would have to sacrifice a large portion of his potatoes to try growing enough more potatoes to keep himself alive for the length of time that maybe they could come and rescue him. And we just learned that, to get a potato, you have to plant a potato. So, what if he risks all this portion of his food, buries it, and nothing grows? Then he loses his life sooner. Which reminds me of what Jesus said. Very truly, I tell you, unless a grain of wheat falls into the earth and dies, it remains but a single plant, single grain. But if it dies, it bears much fruit. So he risks his potatoes. And in the process, it bears much fruit. No spoilers here. I won't give you the rest of the story. It's a good movie. It's worth watching if you haven't already. So enough about The Martian. Enough about potatoes, for that matter. In John's gospel this morning, a message erupts from Jesus as he's being sought out by, it says, some Greeks. Of course, by the time John's gospel is written, in about 90 AD-ish, Jesus is known by the Greeks and the Romans and the Ethiopians and the Egyptians. His death, his life, his teaching, and his followers' love and pacifism have spread news around the Mediterranean world. So he actually did, as it said in the text, draw all people to himself. Even those Greeks that started it out reminded him of that. To the point where his followers became so well known that they became a threat to the powerful. And they, some of them, ended up being killed even as Jesus was. In Jesus' words, those who love their life will lose it, and those who hate their life in this world will keep it for eternal life, offered people that were under that kind of threat some comfort. It also offers some challenge to people who were seeking only their own comfort. Now, to be fair, in New Testament Greek here, that little saying about loving life and hating life isn't quite so cut and dried. The word love their life is actually the word phileo, which is friend love in Greek, which is what the Bible's written in. As in, friend, he's his own best friend, or me first. And the opposite of that, those who hate their life, the word in Greek is miseo, which is the same root as dismiss, or has the sense of esteeming less. In other words, it's not all about me. It's a little closer to the meaning in the original language. So the contrast is hold your life tightly or give your life to others. And Jesus feels this great choice when the Greeks show up, seeking him, because he can see that's what it comes down to. And he knows that his local enemies have already begun to scheme to get him. And his fame has been growing so widely that he is now seen as a threat to them. Now, people outside his faith and culture coming and asking his followers, we wish to see Jesus. That sparks in him a realization. And maybe John includes that word, we wish to see Jesus, for his followers reading John generations later at the end of first century, or maybe even his followers reading it 21 centuries later. We wish to see Jesus. The question is, how much Jesus can people see in us? How do we treat each other? With humility and kindness, with respect, with compassion? Are we accepting of different opinions or different styles? Can people see that kind of Jesus in us? We wish to see Jesus, they said. Do we try to heal the world like Jesus did? Do we give our life to make that happen, or do we hold it tight and look out for number one? Are we willing to risk ourselves to bring peace, like the Prince of Peace? We wish to see Jesus. Yeah, you already heard this in the Mountain Rise News, but next Saturday, March 24th, 3 p.m., downtown, I invite you to join me on the March for Life in Washington Square Park to help make peace by addressing gun violence as a legislative priority. It seems to me that followers of Jesus would want to step up and be seen there. We may not agree on the solutions exactly, but we can all agree that there's a problem here in our country. Marching for peace and against gun violence, yeah, there's some risk. But we met some people who took much bigger risks last fall when they were marching for peace in their own country, the most violent in the Western Hemisphere, Honduras. And they did it because they wanted people to see some Jesus in them. Because they take seriously his words, "Blessed are the peacemakers," and because they wanted to help stop violence in their own city. Are we willing to get out of our comfort zones and off our comfy couches to be peacemakers? And it seems fitting that we should be doing a March for Life on the day before Palm Sunday, when we celebrate Jesus' march into Jerusalem, when he was symbolically riding the opposite of a war horse, a tiny donkey, to the point that it looked ridiculous. Hopefully, unlike Jesus, no one gets hurt for standing up for peace. And hopefully, marching strengthens our resolve to not settle for the level of violence in our country. You know, think about it. We went to war when nearly 3,000 people were killed on 9/11 in a horrific act of terrorist violence. Yet, in 2016, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention recorded in the United States 38,658 people were killed by gun violence, including suicides. And 3,800 of those gun deaths, they were children and teens in the United States in 1 year. We can do better than that. All other free, democratic, developed countries do better than that. I was amazed. I heard on NPR this week, Japan, who has very restrictive gun laws, different culture. How many deaths did they have by gun last year? 1. We can do better. As followers of our risk-taking, people-loving rescuer from Galilee, we can take some risks ourselves and plant some peace. We can keep planting and risking our potatoes to change God's world for good. We may not see the results soon, but great change takes time and persistence. Think of Susan B. Anthony. That's a close-to-home person. Decades of struggle she endured for women's votes and against slavery. Endless travel, winter and summer, bad food, bed bugs, hostile crowds throwing eggs and shoes, slander, disrespect for decades. Still, she persisted, as they say. She kept planting good and risking herself. Well, we know Anthony's planting for justice did bear fruit, but not so quickly. Yes, slavery did end, but women didn't get the vote until years after she died. But her planting bore fruit. Though we may not see the full benefit of planting a tree, this does not prevent us from planting to create shade and fresh air for our grandchildren, does it? Maybe they will see some Jesus in the path we plant for them if we stand up for nonviolence, if we choose to make the world a better place. I pray that we will have the faith to trust God with our risky planting, that we will have the faith to do generous living, that we will have the courage to make peace. Amen.